The following is a very special episode of the Danville Discussion.
Who's the improbable duo that you heard about? Faster than a scooter, stronger than metal. Who's a little girl and a domesticated rodent? Who's still standing when you see the dust settle? It's Hamster! Hamster and Gretel! They can do it that nobody can. Hamster! Hamster and Gretel! There's also Kevin in the minivan.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Danville Discussion, a podcast about all things related to Phineas and Ferb. My name is Doerksen and some of you may know me from my YouTube channel of the same name, home of some web series related to animation such as Caleb Reviews. If this episode is your introduction to this podcast, well, I'll tell you all about it. This is a podcast in which I go through each episode of Phineas and Ferb, and I try to list down all the cultural references, songs, and gags, hopefully share my memories of first watching the episode, and then it's all going to end with me giving the episode a roller coaster rating. But this week, we're not going to do anything of the kind. Instead, we're going to reveal more news about a new Disney show coming directly from San Diego Comic-Con last week. Now, I just want to put in a little plug before we begin that if you want to check out more episodes of the Danville Discussion, then head on down to anchor.fm/Caleb-Doerksen, that's Doerksen, and it'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion website on Anchor. You can also share your feedback about the news this week by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com. That's danvillediscussion@gmail.com. That's all lowercase, with the series title followed by San Diego Comic-Con in the subject line. Now, to start this off, let's head over to San Diego Comic-Con and see all the latest news that's happened in entertainment last week. Of course, we've gotten panels with more info and brand new looks at stuff like Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which is the sequel to the 2019 DC film Shazam, as well as Tiny Toons University, the reboot of Tiny Toon Adventures, which looks pretty much the same as the original. It's not quite like the Animaniacs reboot where they took the character designs from the original show and altered them a bit. Warner Brothers Animation even revealed in a piece of key art where the Tiny Toons are jumping out of the TV that characters like Fifi LaFume, who I first saw in another promo art for this reboot, as well as Montana Max and Elmira Duff, will in fact return. The only real issue is that Buster and Babs Bunny are confirmed to be siblings when they were originally of no relation. Then there's also the Proud Family Louder and Prouder for Disney Plus, where they revealed some brief information about Season 2, such as the announcement of a Juneteenth episode. Also, there were some panels of the Ghost and Molly McGee, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Nimona, which was saved from Blue Sky Studios after Disney shut them down, and has recently been confirmed for a spring 2023 release date on Netflix, and also a panel for Teen Titans Go, The Loud House, a brand new Cartoon Network show called The Heroic Quest of the Valiant Prince Ivandoe, several new Marvel Cinematic Universe projects, including another Captain America film and 2 new Avengers films that will possibly have different iterations of those characters, and some news on the first Avatar Studios movie based on Avatar: The Last Airbender, where all the characters are young adults and it will also focus on Aang. But none of those panels are what I'll be talking about. There is one panel that I've saved for the sake of the Danville discussion because I'm sure this will get plenty of Dwampyverse fans talking. And I am talking, of course, about Dan Povenmire's new animated series for Disney Channel, Hamster and Gretel. Alright, now before I get on with this panel, I just want to take some time to go over what's been going on with the show over the past couple months, just to get it out of the way, because I wasn't able to cover it at the time since I didn't do this podcast back then. So at the beginning of June, Disney released a sneak peek for the show as part of a marathon of premieres that Disney Channel was doing for superhero-related content on June 3rd, where they aired the 2018 Pixar film Incredibles 2, the sequel to the original 2004 film The Incredibles, followed by the back-to-back series premieres of two brand new live-action series made for the network, with The Villains of Valley View and Ultraviolet and Black Scorpion for 2 separate hours straight respectively. And this sneak peek is basically the cold opening of the first episode of Hamster and Gretel, which I'll explain more about when I begin talking about that show, which I actually will when it premieres, but I'll say more about that at the end of this episode. Anyways, when it comes to the reactions to this clip, they were mostly mixed. Some people liked it, some people thought it was okay, some people thought it was mediocre, and then there are those that were just flat out not happy with it, some calling it a downgrade from Dan's previous work with Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law. Like, most of those comments and quote retweets on Twitter have been mostly harsh on it, even though it's not already out yet. And to those people, I just have to say, can you please wait until the first few episodes are already aired and watch them before you give out your final opinion? Please? Alright, but anyways, what do I have to say about the clip? I would say it's decent. Not the best, but not bad either. It's just a solid first look at what the show has to offer. Let's start with the characters themselves, and when it comes to Gretel, I do think she's a pretty fun character from what I saw in here, but unfortunately, because the show is still not out yet, I don't really have much to say about Hamster until we get to some of the promos that we got later on, so maybe there will be more to talk about with Hamster. And I have seen some people criticizing Gretel's voice actress, and in case you don't know, Gretel is voiced by Dan's daughter Melissa Povenmire, or Melly for short. And those people are saying that it doesn't fit the character as Gretel's a child and Melly's a teenager / young adult. But my thoughts on her voice? I would have to strongly and respectfully disagree on that, because I personally feel that Melissa does a decent job voicing Gretel, and it kinda does fit her personality. It's kinda like how Vincent Martella would provide his voice for Phineas in Phineas and Ferb, where Phineas is a kid voiced by a guy who went through puberty the first time, and is now in his adulthood. And I would have to say that Gretel and Phineas both sound as optimistic as one another. They're both acting positive in their own right. But then we have her older brother Kevin, the teenage boy who got his driver's license for his 16th birthday and ends up driving Gretel in his mom's minivan. The only thing I can really say about him is that I kinda see him as some sort of a Jeremy clone. You know, Jeremy Johnson, the guy working at the Mr. Slushy chains who is Candace's love interest in Phineas and Ferb. I do see some differences in Kevin's design, like he has lighter skin, dark brown eyes, and some brown hair in a different style, but I feel it's like they took Jeremy's design, recolored his clothes to match his Mr. Slushy outfit, and altered certain parts to try and make him stand out. Nothing against the people who designed Kevin, but it's just his design could have looked more different. It's kind of similar to Elfo from Matt Groening's Disenchantment, where I often see him as nothing but Green Bart. Like, he's basically a green medieval elf version of Bart Simpson. Plus, I've noticed how scarily similar Kevin's voice is to Jeremy, but that could be just me. By the way, Kevin is voiced by Michael Cimino, who some of you may know from the Hulu and Disney Plus series Love, Victor from 20th Television. And I do appreciate the talent he has, and he also does an okay job with Kevin. The only weird thing about it is that I sometimes get Jeremy Johnson vibes through his voice as well as his design. In terms of the writing, it's mostly alright. Like, it is solid with how it still maintains that feel of the other Povenmire shows, but there are some times where it can feel rushed. I have heard some concerns about the plot point involving aliens, as it was done several times in both Phineas and Milo, to the point that some people may find that it's overused. But at least this time, the alien UFO, who is voiced by Dan Povenmire with his real voice, shows up for a fraction of a minute to give out their superpowers and then takes off never to be seen again. Like, basically, the UFO hovers over the minivan and they say, "The two of you have been chosen, take your powers with you, use them for good, see ya!" It is kind of funny with the lack of importance of the aliens in this show, but it also shows its rushed nature here in terms of how they got their powers. I am hoping that it's not as much of a problem when the show actually comes out. But aside from that, I actually really liked the humor in this. While the jokes are different from Phineas or Milo, they're surprisingly funny in my opinion. I couldn't go a single second without laughing at parts such as when Kevin tries to use his powers like Gretel does, but it turns out they don't work on him, and they don't even know that Hamster got Kevin's powers instead. Those bits were spot on. The last thing I need to talk about is the animation, and this is what people have been criticizing the most here. For your information, unlike Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law, where the majority of the episodes were animated by Synergy, the animation in this show is provided by Snipple Animation, which was also responsible for doing the animation in the first part of Candace Against the Universe, the second Phineas and Ferb movie, and is also one of the studios that have worked on the Animaniacs reboot. When it comes to Candace Against the Universe, some of you may remember me doing a review of that film back in 2020 on YouTube and DeviantArt, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I would have to say most of the animation in that movie really isn't as bad as most people claim it to be. In fact, I would even say it's somewhat a step up from the original show, closer to the veins of something like the Simpsons movie. I mean, sure, it still has most of that TV quality, and the animation by Snipple in the early moments wasn't really the best due to the thick line art and a few off-model shots of the characters, but the rest of the animation by Synergy and Yerim was great. Plus, the addition of more shading on certain elements and more gradient sky backgrounds really made it look closer to a cinematic feel. Also, the reason why the animation in Candace Against the Universe varies for most people is because this was being completed during the pandemic, which caused several studios to shut down and work from home, and Dan and Swampy had to go through those various overseas studios to tweak the animation and try to make it look right. So, about what I said about the Snipple parts of Candace Against the Universe, the same can be said about the animation in Hamster and Gretel in general, where it's not as bad as some might claim, but some parts do feel kinda rough, even in terms of how the characters move. Now, keep in mind, Dan began pitching work on this show back in 2019, both around the time that Milo Murphy's Law ended without cause, and during production on Candace Against the Universe, so I'm guessing this was done during the pandemic as well? I don't know. But I do at least see how it is more understandable with Phineas and Ferb the movie too. But as far as I feel, this clip is mostly alright. Okay, so moving on, let's go over all the other news briefly. At the Annecy International Animation Film Festival, Dan Povenmire and Brandy Young revealed that Hamster and Gretel will be set in the same universe as Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law, except in a different town, because the previous two shows are set in Danville, which is a big factor to why some of the Phineas and Ferb cast would show up in Season 2 of Milo. They also said that there will be some Easter eggs from those shows and that some characters will make some appearances. Now, the one thing I hope more about with this show is that it can be focused more on itself so that it develops a bigger identity of its own. Because while I did have fun with Milo throughout its run, I can see where some people might point out that it tried a little too much to be a follow-up to Phineas and Ferb with the addition of characters like Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Like, I liked his development in there, as well as his story arc to become a time traveler, but I feel like Season 2 could have relied a little less on having Doof appear in almost each episode. So I'm hoping that Hamster and Gretel can balance itself more. They even revealed the first poster where we see Gretel and Hamster getting ready to fight a ton of villains as Kevin is on top of a building on the upper right looking down in awe while on his smartphone. I gotta say, that is a cool looking poster since you get a first glimpse of all these villains that our main heroes are going up against. Then some more characters were revealed, including Fred, short for Winifred, who is Gretel and Kevin's techie cousin and is gonna be voiced by Joey King, Hiromi, a pink-haired teenager who is Kevin's love interest and works at a comic shop, Bailey, who is Gretel's best friend in school, Carolina, who is Gretel and Kevin's mom and was based on Dan's Venezuelan wife, and ironically she's voiced by Carolina Ravassa, and Dave, Gretel and Kevin's dad, who looks like a younger version of Dan himself, but he'll be voiced by Matt Jones. And coming on board is writer and comedian Joanna Hausman as co-producer, and Beck Bennett, the voice of Launchpad McQuack in the DuckTales reboot, as the voice of Hamster. Before the Annecy panel, Dan also said that the aliens would be part of a major story arc, but I'll see how that ultimately plays out even though it's overused in his shows, and that Season 1 will contain 30 episodes, just like how Big City Greens would run for almost each season. So that's it for the Annecy panel. Let's jump over to July 7th, and we've got some more information regarding the cast, where Eliza Koshy, or Koshai, I can't pronounce it, can you? I don't know, but anyways, she will be the voice of news reporter Veronica Hill. Priya Ferguson from Stranger Things will voice Bailey, rapper Akintoy as Kevin's friend Anthony, Jenny Lorenzo from Victor and Valentino as Carolina's mother Abuelita, and TikTok star Casey Hamilton as Mr. Chapner, the substitute teacher in Gretel's class, and we have some additional cast members to voice some of the villains, including Destructress, voiced by Allison Stoner, who previously voiced Isabel Garcia Shapiro and Jenny Brown in Phineas and Ferb, and Lydia in Milo Murphy's Law, and is also the current voice of Sam Sharp in The Loud House, Fist Puncher, voiced by Brock Powell, who also did Vlorkel and a few Feebla Oot aliens in Phineas and Ferb Candace Against the Universe, La Cebolla, voiced by Karina Lavaz, Nayslayer, voiced by Thomas Sanders, who voiced Throat Lobster in Candace Against the Universe, and Earworm, voiced by Adam Rose. They also released a couple promos around this time, which have revealed a final premiere date of Friday, August 12th on Disney Channel, with new episodes airing every Saturday from there. And honestly, those are actually much better previews for the show than what came before them. Like, it actually does show more of what to expect, though my thoughts on the animation and humor remain the same. We also get to hear Hamster's voice for the first time in this from Beck Bennett, and he sounds a lot like reboot Launchpad McQuack in here, honestly. These promos give me a bigger reason for me to give this show a chance. The first round of episode titles have also been revealed for August, and I'm going to read them out here from my source on Twitter from the Disney Animation Promos account. The first 4 half hours will be split into 2 11-minute segments, as usual with the other Povenmire shows, and for the series premiere on Friday, August 12th, we have these segments. Empower Failure. Hamster and Gretel get superpowers from aliens while Kevin grapples with being superhero adjacent. Okie Dokie, and that's spelled O-A-K-E-Y, Dokie. Kevin and Gretel disagree over how to stop a meteor. On Saturday, August 13th, we've got Recipe for Disaster. Kevin and Gretel have to rescue family dinner night. Math Punch. Gretel faces off against a lightning-powered cowboy as Dave struggles to get Carolina the perfect anniversary gift. On Saturday, August 20th, we're going to be getting Superhero Sibling Rivalry. Gretel battles twin villains on her own, and I think this is going to be the episode with Destructress and Fist Puncher. Close Shave. Gretel's hero hunch gets her into trouble. And finally, on Saturday, August 27th, we have Cheer Cheer Bang Bang. Fred goes deep undercover as a cheerleader. And La Ballad of La Cebolla. Gretel and Kevin meet a villain with a unique ability. So keep your eyes peeled for those air dates. Okay, now that we've gotten all the previous news out of the way, let's get over to the actual San Diego Comic-Con panel, which I'm reading from various sources on Twitter and the web, including Laughing Place. And the people from the cast and crew who attended this panel include, of course, Dan Povenmire. Then there's also Joanna Hausman, Michael Cimino, Melly Povenmire, Carolina Ravassa, Brock Powell, and Allison Stoner, who even said that she was excited to play a Disney villain after playing Isabella for several years, which I am grateful for her. Dan said that he used different parts of his life to create the show, and that the elevator pitch for Hamster and Gretel back in 2019 is that a brother and sister get abducted by aliens, but the aliens give the sister and her pet hamster superpowers, and how that changes the dynamic, like we saw in the sneak peek. They also announced a full soundtrack album from Walt Disney Records to be released on digital and streaming platforms at a later date, since Milo never got a soundtrack album, and they only had a few songs for that show released, including the theme song and Chop Away at My Heart, which became part of the Candace Against the Universe soundtrack. Some of the songs are done by Dan Povenmire and also Michael Cimino, who will also be songwriting, and the album has been confirmed to be released on August 12th, the same day that the show officially premieres. Another thing that Dan commented is that, I think this is a better album than the Phineas and Ferb album. Honestly, I have no doubts at all that the songs and soundtrack of Hamster and Gretel will be good, especially considering that some of the songwriters and musicians behind the show have also done the music from both Phineas and Milo. But would I really say that the soundtrack will be better than the music in Phineas and Ferb? I don't know exactly. They could be on the same level. I mean, I don't know if there are any songs that might be able to top stuff like Summer Belongs to You, Ain't Got Rhythm, Us Against the Universe, or even Busted, due to how iconic most of them are. Anyways, the show will also release its first number of episodes on Disney Plus in the US in August, and rumors stated that they would be there on August 17th. Dan said he does his homework when it comes to jokes. One of these was remembering a SpongeBob joke he wrote during Season 2 that ended up being used in Phineas and Ferb. He did research on pie gags in order to make sure the finished product looked good enough. He even stated that if the show does well, there would be higher chances of a possible Phineas and Ferb crossover, maybe even one with both that and Milo Murphy's Law. And honestly, I'm all for it. If the show can at least do better than how Milo Murphy's Law performed in ratings, then I do see the potential in a crossover between Hamster and Gretel and Phineas and Ferb. Another extra thing that Dan mentioned is that he is aware that the Majesty building in Orlando looks like an evil headquarters and wants to do a TikTok about it because apparently some people have compared it to Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, the building where Dr. Doofenshmirtz lives and plans his schemes. And as a bonus, it was also announced that there would be a trilogy of Chibi Tiny Tales shorts based on Hamster and Gretel this fall, which might also mean that the Hamster and Gretel characters will eventually show up in the full-length series Chibiverse, which is kind of weird considering that Milo never got any Chibi shorts, as I don't think Disney wants to talk about it anymore. Like, they've done jack squat with it ever since it aired its last episode, except feature Trucker Ted as well as Chop Away at My Heart in Candace Against the Universe. Brock Powell then said, "I'm the best Disney television animation ship of the 2020s. That's right, I am Baby Hill." Just kidding. According to this, he's going to be voicing another villain by the name of Big Baby, and because he said Baby Hill, that implies that he could either be a relative to or even be a date to Veronica Hill, the news reporter. I feel that this relationship could go in a weird direction, and when it comes to Big Baby, it's kind of like if they took the giant floating baby head, gave him a body, and made him look like a grown-up with some facial hair. This is also not to forget that Dan said, while being asked about the possibility of that crossover that I was talking about earlier, "We don't have concrete plans other than we drop hints that they're in the same place periodically. We don't have that story figured out because we have a big sweeping story that goes through the second season, knock on wood, but we always sort of have that in the back of our minds. How are we going to put these guys together at some point? Because I think it would be really fun. I always love revisiting those worlds. I love to do one where Phineas, Ferb, Milo, and the Hamster and Gretel crew are all together." And with that, Hamster and Gretel also got renewed for a second season ahead of its premiere, which gives me more hope for the show. Like, if it manages to be a nice, fun show written-wise, and it does well on Disney Channel, then I am intrigued to see what they do for season 2. And to those that are still complaining like, "Oh, this show is gonna fail and flop hard," or "This looks terrible, it's never gonna catch on, why don't you just hear me out on this? Never underestimate the guy named Dan. He's got a huge story in development, and he promises for it not to be a failure. This statement right here has proven that this new show might perform better ratings-wise than his last show, because the thing is, Milo started out on Disney XD, a sister network to the main Disney Channel, where not everyone could easily get access to it, and that's one of the biggest reasons why it wasn't able to find a large audience. This, however, is running on Disney Channel entirely, so no doubt about it that it's going to do decently well, no matter what you feel about it. But the biggest highlights of this San Diego Comic-Con panel, though, are the reveal of the poster and a brand new clip. I've saved the biggest reveals for last. Let's begin with the second poster, and here we see Gretel and Hamster standing on a pile of defeated villains in the middle of the city, while Kevin is putting his hand over his face to keep the flash out of his eyes, because the flash is right behind our heroes as they're the stars of the show. This is another cool poster as it really looks colorful, something that will look really neat on a comic book cover considering the feel to it, just like the last poster we got. I even see a bank robber or a burglar in the pile. The one weird thing I noticed with one of the other villains is that the one with the hook on his arm somehow reminds me of Thaddeus Plotz from Animaniacs or Superintendent Chalmers from The Simpsons. Like, you've got the partially bald head with gray hair around the bald spot, you have the bossy nose, you have the big body, and you've got him dressed in a dark blue suit and red tie, and there you have your big boss type character, or in this case, a big boss type villain. But then there's also the clip that they showed, and they actually showed the main title for this. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may have saw the clip for it at the beginning, but for those listening on Anchor and other podcast apps, the opening goes as follows, where the title characters are running toward the screen in front of a sunburst, then we see them flying past a moving scooter because they are faster than that, and at nighttime they bend a lamppost toward an old lady sitting at a bench reading a book, and she thanks them for it. Then there's a shot of them with Gretel waving at us and pointing at Hamster in his cage as red arrows appear on screen, also pointing at them, followed by another shot where smoke clears out and the camera pans up to Hamster and Gretel standing on a pile of villains that they defeat, just like we saw in the second poster, with their capes flowing in the air. This is then followed by some action shots where our heroes are posing around various silhouettes, as well as in front of a city silhouette, and we see them flying around in front of a zooming effect, and some more action shots with silhouettes, and then they're flying towards some meteors. Hamster is sucking on his water, and then we get to the title card, with Hamster, Gretel, and Kevin's poses similar to the first official drawing that was revealed of the show back when it was announced. Below the logo is the creator's credit, created by Dan Povenmire, in the same font as the Milo Murphy's Law credits, and since the singer said there's also Kevin in the minivan, the last clip they show after the title card is a reused clip from the cold opening of Kevin inside the minivan with the heroes carrying him in it. Out of all the opening titles in each Dwampyverse show, this is the shortest, going for about 30 seconds. The Milo Murphy's Law opening goes for close to 46 seconds, and Phineas and Ferb is 57 seconds. Also, unlike the previous two shows where the Phineas and Ferb opening is performed by a popular band with Bowling for Soup, and the Milo Murphy's Law theme is done by the voice of the title character with Weird Al Yankovic, the voice of Milo Murphy, the Hamster and Gretel theme is actually sung by some of the composers and singers who did some of the music and songs for the previous shows, mainly Aaron Daniel Jacob. So that's pretty much the main title. And what are my thoughts on this theme song? Well, the song is pretty catchy, though I have heard a few people criticize it for copying Gotta Get Gone from the Across the Second Dimension video game. I mean, yeah, the beat is similar, but it does have a rather different tune. Like, Gotta Get Gone sounds like here, it sounds more like
Who's the improbable duo that you heard about?
Plus, rather than that song, I actually got more Agent P vibes out of it because of its superhero action feel. Like, this is definitely something that would feel right at home with the Phineas and Ferb subplots where Perry the Platypus becomes a secret agent. It's still a fun, catchy theme song that would kind of fit well with this show. And what about my thoughts on the animation? Well, like with the other clips and promos we saw, they haven't changed here. Like, there are still some flaws in the animation, but it's just okay. You know, it's weird that when Gretel is facing the fourth wall, it can sometimes creep some people out, though I didn't find it as weird or freaky as front-facing Phineas when you pause at the correct time. Like, those frames of Gretel facing us have some sort of meme potential. Like, have captions around her facing forward that say, "I'm gonna come at you," or "I'm gonna steal your meme," or even "front-facing Gretel can't hurt you," etc., etc. Any meme captions like that. But yeah, on one hand, the animation does get rough sometimes, but on the other hand, this is a good theme song and opening sequence. And because it's coming from Dan, I remain positive that the show will be solid in many aspects. I know other people complaining about the show have said that Dan Povenmire can't pull something off on his own without Jeff Swampy Marsh, and to those who still think that regarding this show, I suggest that you kindly zip it. I mean that in a nice manner. That is a completely stupid excuse because his solo work on other animated series from other people, like SpongeBob SquarePants, Family Guy during its early seasons, and even Hey Arnold, all of that proves that he can work alone, even without Swampy by his side. I'm also saying this to those who believe the idea that Disney canceled the Owl House in favor of Hamster and Gretel, because that is completely false as well, since pretty much everyone knows why it got canceled. The reason for the Owl House's cancellation is because Disney CEO Bob Chapek does not seem to care about the LGBTQ plus representation in the show, let alone in Nimona when they rejected that movie and shut down the film's original studio Blue Sky, because apparently Mr. Chapek is a complete homophobe homophobe and a hypocrite. Saying this pathetic ideology is like saying that ever-tiring false claim that Sony Pictures Animation canceled Genndy Tartakovsky's Popeye for the Emoji Movie. Just stop making up that nonsense and form your own opinions when the show premieres. Also, there is one negative person on Twitter that I had to deal with, who I would have to say is the absolute worst out of all the people who panned this show, whether toxic or friendly, and that has to be the user named Dan P. Sucks. Ever since the first official TV promo for Hamster and Gretel was released, this guy made the criticisms toward the show seem worse by also hating on Dan Povenmire himself and comparing him and his work to an actual disgraced creator like Butch Hartman, when that clearly isn't true. With Dan, he does have a few flaws to him and some of his work, but he cares deeply about his audience and he is capable of making something enjoyable. Butch Hartman, on the other hand, while his early work may have been good in the past, like most of Danny Phantom and the early seasons of The Fairly OddParents, Butch as a person himself is a complete douchebag who treats his audience like garbage and is also an ableist and a homophobe. He even created a quote-unquote streaming service called Oaxis, which turned out to be a total scam. And speaking of scam, he's also traced other people's artwork and claimed it as his own. That is illegal. He also claims to have created people's childhoods, when Dan is the real owner of that title, along with several other good creators in the television animation field. That is possibly the worst comparison I have ever heard. No joke. But yeah, that's basically what I have to say about everything that I've seen from this show so far. But I'm not going to say my final thoughts until the show actually airs, and I'm definitely not going to heavily criticize it just because of its animation, because here's the thing. A good script can save bad animation, but good animation cannot save a bad script. And despite some animation issues, I'm still going to overlook its quality as long as the writing and humor are great. It still does look fine to me. Maybe not quite as much as Phineas or Milo, but I still consider it at least better than whatever the heck the recent shows of Butch Hartman look like Bunsen is a Beast or the last season of the original Fairly OddParents, and especially Fairly Odder with its animated elements. So in all, while I do have my concerns with certain aspects, I still stand by the opinion that Hamster and Gretel might be a decently solid show, and I especially think this because I have heard that many of the Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law veterans liked what they saw in here, including Joshua Pruitt, who is going to be involved with the writing team of the show. By looking at all the clips and promos alone, I still remain optimistic, thinking that the series is going to be pretty good. The only thing about it is that I have to watch more episodes so that I can fully say how the show really is, which I am going to do for this podcast because I did mention when I first announced it that I would in fact be talking about Hamster and Gretel along with Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law, and I'm going to be starting my discussions of Hamster and Gretel the week after it premieres on Disney Channel on August 12th. This means that now I'm going to go on a new scheduling turnaround, doing a rotation for each episode, where one time I'll be talking about Phineas and Ferb, and the next time I'll talk about Hamster and Gretel. But the next 2 weeks after this, I'll go through the next 2 episodes of Phineas and Ferb, and then the week after that, that's when I'll begin my Hamster and Gretel discussions. Now, if you guys are like me and you are actually interested or curious to watch Hamster and Gretel, well, like I said, the show will premiere on Friday, August 12th at 9:35 p.m. Eastern on Disney Channel, right after the broadcast premiere of the Disney Plus film Zombies 3, followed by a rerun of the first episode at 10 p.m. Eastern on Disney XD. And that's all the news I've got this week, so thank you for listening to this episode of the Danville Discussion. As for me, you can find me on my Facebook page at Real Caleb Doerksen, on my Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok pages at Caleb Doerksen2 with the number 2 at the end, on my alternate Twitter page at Caleb the PNF Guy, on my Instagram pages at Caleb.Doerksen for my main page, or Caleb Flynn Fletcher for my alternate page, and on my DeviantArt page at Caleb Doerksen20. You can also find me on Discord by entering the username in 2 words, Caleb Doerksen, and then the code number 4600. And if you go to the invite link in the description below, it'll also invite you to my Discord server so that you can talk to me about anything, including this podcast or my other content. Not to mention, you can also find me on YouTube. Just search for Caleb Doerksen and look for the icon of me as a soldier. As for this podcast, you can find us on Anchor by using your Apple or Android device or going on the web at anchor.fm/Caleb-Doerksen. It'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion page. If you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast service you use, do you mind going ahead and rating and reviewing us? That would be very nice if you did so. And if you've listened to this podcast as a video on YouTube, then please consider pressing that like button on my video and leave us a comment with your thoughts about the Hamster and Gretel news from the past weekend. You can also share your feedback by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the series title followed by the word San Diego Comic-Con in the subject line. Tune in next week for the latest episode of the Danville Discussion and all things related to Phineas and Ferb, and soon to be beyond, since I'll soon be talking about Hamster and Gretel. Thanks again for listening, and until next week when I get back to my regular Phineas and Ferb discussions, this is Caleb, over and out. This podcast was created strictly and only for entertainment and information purposes. It is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company, Disney Television Animation, or their affiliates. All and any names, images, clips, sounds, or other items related to Phineas and Ferb, Milo Murphy's Law, Hamster and Gretel, and other Disney properties are trademarks and or copyrights of their respective holders. All original content from this podcast is the intellectual property of the Danville Discussion and the host or hosts running the podcast unless otherwise noted.
This is my life.